Move on to the story. Let's unpack the lockdown effects. Some experts warn that lifting the lockdown as scheduled on April the 16th would be too early. Meanwhile, mining companies want to restart operations during South Africa's lockdown. We spoke to Joseph Matunjwa, who's talking about a proposal to have 50% of the workforce coming back to work, to which they are objecting as AMCU. And also the situation around the leadership of President Ramaphosa being tested around the issue of Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. So let's bring in then Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana, a political analyst, to talk to us about this situation. We have to start, Prof, around the issue with Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. What have you made around the whole outcry initially, then the President's response to that outcry, and now her apology?
Well, I think the President did the right thing. There were two senior officials, for instance, the last few days in Scotland as well as in Britain. A senior bureaucrat who had to quit a job and a minister who was demoted exactly because of this kind of thing. So everyone was expecting some kind of sanction on Stella, the minister. And I think what has happened is exactly the kind of action that people expected the President to take. And perhaps he could have made it 2 months of unpaid leave, but at least there is some sanction. That's what people are looking for, especially at this time where you are looking for decisive leadership, you are looking for compliance, and people need credibility from their ministers. Ministers can't tell people to do certain things, and yet they turn around and do exactly the opposite.
Well, the message is clear, Prof. Stay at home, observe these lockdown regulations so that we can reach, of course, a target of curbing, the coronavirus pandemic within the country. But, I mean, when we talk about the lockdown and we see these loopholes of, Minister Lindiwe Zulu, Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams sort of being seen to not respecting, compliance in this regard. Some South Africans as well are arrested, for not complying with these regulations. Could this call for an extension, of the lockdown? Is there a possibility in having that extension, since it seems there are a lot of gaps within these 21 days already?
See, people already don't trust government. They think that government say one thing and do something else altogether. So for people to comply with government instructions, there needs to be a certain level of trust. They need to see that government does exactly as they say. So for ministers not to act accordingly reinforces the level of distrust in government, meaning that people would not comply. So that is why it is important for ministers to do as they say. And of course, what has happened, as you say, is that initially people haven't complied, especially in the townships, in a lot of areas, even though generally there's been a higher level of compliance. But there are certain areas where this message has not quite registered, which then means that it might create the possibility of extending the lockdown, because what you need for you to lift the lockdown is certainty that you don't have people who are infected there who can spread the disease, right? But the added thing to that is that we need to do as many tests as possible. Here in Gauteng, for instance, MEC Masuku was speaking, I think yesterday or so, saying that they've screened about 7,000 to 8,000 people. I can't remember exactly. So Gauteng is massive, right? So 8,000 of people that we have screened is a minute segment of our population in Gauteng. So you cannot rush to lift the lockdown unless you have certainty that people are pretty much clear of the virus. And that certainty you can get from the level of testing that you are able to do. In our case, we have reason to worry a little bit because some people did not take the message seriously. And so you can't say, well, in the suburbs, for instance, or in other areas, people complied, but in some areas they haven't. So those in the suburbs are fine. No, you can't say that because ultimately we share the same space. So we need to make sure that an overwhelming segment of our population is free of the virus, and we can only do that through testing.
Mcebisi Ndletyana, thank you so much for talking to us via Skype there. Stay at home. Don't go for lunch.
I plan to. Cheers.
All right, coming up, we look at what role technology is playing during the 21-day lockdown. Stay with us here on ENCA.